Communication isn't just about talking, it's about connecting. You can have the right strategy, the right talent, the right mission, but without communication, trust breaks, teams drift, and relationships collapse. Communication really is the bridge that makes everything else possible. Come on, let's get this conversation started. Welcome back to Transformation Station, the podcast where growth meets action and leadership becomes impact. I'm your host, Adrienne Benton, and today we're diving into one of the most underrated leadership superpowers. That's right, we're talking about communication. Why are we talking about it? Well, communication isn't just words, it's clarity, empathy, and connection. It really is the difference between misunderstanding and momentum, between people feeling managed and people feeling valued. And today, we're going to talk about how when communication is strong, relationships strengthen, teams align, and trust becomes a part of the culture. Well, today I'm really excited because I have an amazing guest. And I call her amazing because she really is just that, a woman who is an amazing leader that I have respected over the years, and I am honored to call her friend. Let me tell you a little bit about Jessica Betz. Jessica Betz, originally from New Jersey, enlisted in the Navy from New Hampshire in 1996, a nuclear trained surface warfare officer, currently serving as the Assistant Reactor Officer for the USS Carl Vinson out of San Diego, California. She has a Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science from Boston University and a Master's of Arts degree in National Security and Strategic Studies from the Naval War College. She's married to a civil servant, parent of 4 incredible children, and grandparents of 1. A Christian, loves serving, mentoring the next generation. And today I am honored to bring to Transformation Station Jessica Betz. Jessica, welcome. And we're so glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I really have been looking forward to this conversation. And Jess, over the years, I've seen leaders who knew how to talk, leaders who knew how to connect. And the difference was unmistakable, right? When we communicate with clarity, we remove confusion. When we communicate with intention, we build trust. So, Jess, I want to start off by asking you this question. From your years of experience, tell us, what does communication as a bridge of connection mean to you personally and as a leader?
Well, Adrienne, I'd say that the bridge of connection, like unifying a team towards a common goal or vision, is essential for any type of success, whether you're in the military, in business, or even in your marriage. It's important that we all are speaking to one another and voicing what our expectations are and our values. So yeah, it's essential for what I do day in, day out to, help managing 500 sailors on the Carl Vinson.
Absolutely. And we're going to hear a little bit more about how you relate all this to your actual everyday leadership. When you were talking, I was thinking about how, like in the workspace, it can literally turn confusion into clarity. And I want to pause right there, right? Non-scripted, have you seen where when there was clear communication in the workplace, maybe with your team, that you literally could see how it moved the communication, that the confusion that was happening, and turned it into clarity?
Absolutely. I mean, as most recently as I just got back from a extended 9-month deployment on the Carl Vinson, and it was supposed to be like a 5-month deployment, and all of a sudden we were called into Fifth Fleet in order to take care of business, and the department were overwhelmed. They were expecting to be home for the summer with their families after missing the last 2 years of with deployments. And it was extremely hard. And the ship of 5,000, but our department in particular, 500 that are working around the clock, making sure that the reactor plants are up and operational at all times. It can be trying, especially if this was your first experience of a deployment, first experience on a ship, and not getting port calls like the detailers might or the recruiters might tell you about. It was a challenging time. So as a leadership team, we came together, the reactor officer, myself, and the reactor department master chief. So almost like the department's triad, let's say, of leadership. And
Mhm.
like, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to carry forth this vision and keep people motivated and show the importance of the person on the deck plates, the most junior sailor, what
Mhm.
they do matters. And we communicated on many different levels, starting with, hey, we're going to get the whole department together and we're going to talk to them about what the goal and the vision is of the Secretary of War and the vision of the carrier strike group and the captain of our carrier. And so we, bottom line up front, we, got them up there and it's like, hey, this is the reality. This is why that strength from the sea starts with reactor department on the ship, right? You
Mhm.
making sure that steam gets to the roof, that we have electricity, and trying to make sure like, hey, you as a most junior sailor make an impact. If you don't do your job, we can't launch aircraft. If you don't do your job, we cannot maintain electricity or create 400,000 gallons of water a day. We can't do that. And so it started there with first, like, this is the goal, this is the vision, and then these are what we need from you, right? Our
Yeah.
expectations, and then go forth, and then we would communicate in our daily night orders, just written word for the watch standards, so that they would get some more motivation and the more focused efforts. And then have a plan of the day that I also submit out, so we communicate that way. And then we also submit emails trying to re-emphasize our focus for the rest of deployment.
I love that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and it helped, I'd say, for the sailors, and we also received feedback as well. Like, hey, what other questions do you have? The reactor officer would have coffee talk with sailors that had more further questions and concerns. We made sure they had assets, support networks for at home and on the ships. Whether it be financial support, or whether it be chaplains, or whether it be social workers or psychologists. We had that all available to us, and in order to help them through this period of time and to answer any questions that they might have.
Yeah, I love that 1000%, right? So just literally gave us an example of how the system came together to make sure that there was clear communication, that there were multiple resources and ways in which people could, one, express themselves, but also have resources to be able to get information from, so that everybody was moving along on the same page. As we have this conversation, I just want to remind everyone that the opinions and views expressed here belong solely to the authors and do not necessarily reflect those of the Department of War or its components. Jess and I are talking from our leadership experience, and we want to be able to share that because over the years we have learned so many valuable lessons that continue to help us to move forward with our teams today. So Jess, as you were talking, I was thinking about this. When communication is just words, people hear you. But when communication becomes a bridge, the people trust you. And from what you described, as you and your team set up the system of communication, it then enhanced the ability of your crew to be able to trust you as leaders and to trust the process, right? I know for me, I have to continue to remind myself that so many times as a leader, I'm not going to have all the answers. But if I can provide my team with clarity, with communication, with psychological safety, then we can trust each other to move forward together, right? So I want to ask you this next question. How did your experience in the military shape the way you communicate, especially when building trust across diverse teams? Now, you gave us an illustration, but from your own from your heart, right? As you review and look at your military experience, how does that shape the way you communicate?
I think that's an important question because I am definitely, after being in the Navy for 29 years, I am definitely shaped by
Yeah.
my life in the military. In particular, my career field of a surface warfare officer, if mine versus, let's say, a pilot, or mine versus, let's say, a SEAL team member or something like, are very different.
Yes.
Mine, as a surface warfare officer, they throw you right into the wolves and put you in charge in leadership positions, like from the get-go, as soon as you get commissioned, pretty much. Of course, it's shifted slightly throughout the years, but mine in particular, I started out as a division officer, and sure, I was a political science major, and I went to 6 months of surface warfare school. Obviously, I know how to do life. No. And I'm prior enlisted, so I understand a couple things, right? And
Mhm.
no. And so what they do is they pair you up with, senior enlisted that may have been in the Navy a little longer than you and have a little more experience. And
Yes.
the chief will let you fall and let you fail, but then they will grab you and be like, hey, this is the safe way. This is what you need to be doing. This
Mhm.
is how the sailors will hear. You can't just bark orders and expect them to follow everything you do. You
Mhm.
need to be able to tell them the why. You need to be able to communicate, not because the captain said, but because it's coming from you, right? You have to own the
Mhm.
direction from above. Um, and one thing that stuck with me for a long time is hearing from a leader that I looked up to is Admiral Stavridis,
Mhm.
and he always talked about how communication was like one of the main tools in leadership in order to convey vision, expectations, and build cooperation. And so it was always essential to me to learn how to better communicate. And part of that is taking in that good counsel and course correction from senior enlisted leaders, senior officers, and also get feedback, like a 360 review of people around you on time to time, in order to better tone your voice and the way that you lead others. And throughout the years, I still tell people, 29 years in, I'm still learning something new every single day.
Mhm.
And you experience good and bad leadership, right?
Mhm.
But I
Yes.
always tell sailors that when that happens, um, that you're at a crossroads
Mm.
and you have an option to either be the victim or
Mm.
become the overcomer. So
Mm.
are you
Wow.
a victim and then you're just going to allow yourself to spiral down and be like, all leadership is bad and all this, no one understands me, no one sees me? Or are you going to say, okay, if I'm ever put in that situation again, could I react differently? Could
Mhm.
I speak differently?
Mhm.
Or if you flip it, if I'm ever put in that position,
Mhm.
how would I deal with this differently?
Mhm.
How could I better listen to the needs of others? How
Mhm.
could I better provide guidance,
Mhm.
or actually provide guidance at all?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. No, absolutely. So here in Transformation Station, we always take a moment to let our viewers and listeners have a moment of assessment, right? And so I think it's a great place to be able to do that. So everyone, I invite all of us. Jess said when we have these situations and occurrences that come, we have a choice that we have to make. Are we going to be a victim? Or are we going to be a victor? Now, I said victor. You didn't say that, but
I
pretty
like
much
it.
take what you can be a victim or a victor, right? Are you going to be a victim? Are you going to succumb to complaining and seeing everything from a negative lens, or are you going to be a victor and ask yourself, what can I learn from the situation? What is really true about this situation right now? Is there something in here that can be used to still move forward? While we're trying to figure things out. And so I think it's a really great place for us to stop and to ask ourselves a good assessment question. And, you know, Transformation Station community, whenever we ask ourselves these questions, we don't just ask it and move on. I invite you, as always, to get some pen to paper, to write it down, and to actually answer yourself back. As you were talking, Jess, I was thinking, you know, here within our military community, clarity becomes a standard, not a preference, right? In order to get the mission done, you have to have clarity, right? We know what happens when there is no clarity, right? Things really don't go too well. And because we have diverse teams, you know, it's important for us to have that clarity, because diverse teams thrive when everyone knows exactly what success looks like. You know, we may have to work together to figure out how to get to success, right? But when we at least know what the mission is, or the goal of the mission, then we know what we're working towards. And one of the things that I love about the military community is that everybody has their role. Everybody has their role, right? So you have the mission, and everybody knows what part they play in it, and they are to master that part so that the team comes together to accomplish the whole. So I want to really thank you for helping us to get that clarity here. In your experience, what role does communication play in creating genuine trust and unity within the team? Right? So it's one thing to, as a leader, give clear guidance and say, okay, I've given you guidance, you know what the mission is, now go forth. But what role does communication play in now creating this trust and unity within the team?
I think it's essential from the get-go in order to make any progress whatsoever, or you're going to have, 10 different branches of things happening on, and it's just going to slow down any forward progress. Integrity in your word, and being transparent about your values and your expectations up front, and any required course corrections, ensures that your team understands when they are being held accountable, or if don't if you're not doing something right, and you all of a sudden do a severe course correction. If you're communicating and all along, not just like, this is what I want, and then 5 minutes later, all of a sudden is like, that's not the stone I want, go get this other stone. Nope, that's not the stone I want. I've heard that example before, but for me, it's essential, because you're just going to be on a hamster wheel, just like running in place. And in order to progress towards a vision or a goal, like, you have to be transparent. You have to communicate. And sometimes it's harder for people to do that than others. And I totally acknowledge that. And that's when you, in my opinion, you need to surround yourself with people that are better at things that you're not as good at. And maybe it is communicating a vision. You may be the brains behind it, and someone might be better communicator. And you have to best support them the way that you know how. And those are the most winningest teams that I've seen, is when it's not just one person that everyone has to, authoritarian, that everyone has to follow that. It's actually a team of people, because nobody is perfect. And I have never worked for someone who's been perfect, but the strongest leaders I've ever seen have surrounded themselves with strength on all different facets. I don't know if you've ever heard of the book Strengths Finder. And that's what I think about, is like, you understanding where you're strong at and where you're weak at, and then filling that gap with people around you, right? But communications, if you are not communicating those expectations, or you will not build trust within your team. And in fact, they'll start to believe that they know better, and they know what you mean, and then they could then communicate something that they believe they understand. And if they don't seek further clarification, it could throw you completely off course.
1000%. This is like a master class right here. I'm serious. When you were talking, and we're talking about communication creates safety, right? I was thinking to myself as you were talking, like, people don't speak up. Our team members, they will not share ideas or admit mistakes when they're unsure how a leader will respond. And I love the illustration that you gave in terms of, like, you say this, and then you turn around and say, no, that's not it, right? And when our team, when they don't know what to expect from us, then we get the bare minimum. People are just trying to do the least, just to at least check that box and move on. But we don't get the full gift and the value of who people are and what they bring to the team. Everybody has gifts and talents and strengths, right? When communication is respectful and transparent and steady, then our team members feel safe enough to be honest, right? And I love here it says safety leads to honesty, which then leads to trust. Sometimes as leaders, we don't like conflict, but our team members value when we are able to not walk away from having a strong conversation. And just because we have to have a strong conversation does not mean that we have to devalue or disrespect, right? So here's another one that I thought about. Communication shows respect. Being heard builds buy-in. To all of our leaders, we're talking about communication as a bridge, and Jessica gave us some amazing illustrations, and we want to remind you to really take this seriously. Ask yourself right now, how do you communicate to your team in the way that is personal to you? Because we all have our different communication styles. Are you giving the messaging that you really want your team to have? Messaging that will build honesty and trust, messaging that gives your team psychological safety. Are you showing respect? Right? Sometimes we have a hard time showing respect when we feel like respect is not given back to us. I know sometimes as a leader, sometimes I've had some frustrated seasons, but I have to remind myself that just because that person may not be showing me respect, the respect that I deserve, right, doesn't mean that I then have to in turn be disrespectful to them. And sometimes as leaders, we are called to be that bigger person, to hold the line, or to be the example. And then the last thing that I thought of before we move to the next question is communication repairs conflict. Trust grows when problems are handled, not ignored. And again, to those leaders out there, to those of us in our community that do not like conflict, it's really important that we
Yes.
still find ways that are particular to us. My team knows that if there is a conflict, I'm not going to yell, I'm not going to scream, I'm not going to curse you out, but we are going to just have a very calm but serious conversation, right? And then I've learned over the years that I had somebody who said to me, when you're talking to people and you really want them to pay attention to what you're saying, you want to use words that are non-emotional. So over the
Mm,
years, I have developed my vocabulary so that when I need to have these intentional conversations, my vocabulary, I'm using words that are more concrete. I stay away from, I feel like you, no, take away the feeling. I noticed that blah, 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 X, Y, and Z. I see, I heard when X, Y, and giving concrete examples, then that individual can respond back in a way that is authentic to them. That was a whole mouthful. What are some of your thoughts?
it is, I'd say communication up and down the chain is essential for growth for the individual, whether you're the one counseling or you're the one in receipt. I've had a couple leaders over the years where communication was not flowing back and forth.
Mhm,
Me as a junior officer, and then me as a more senior officer with them, and in particular, it's like one, I it was like no matter what I did, it
mhm,
never seemed good enough. I was
mm,
just like, I am working 150% here. And my peers are like, I don't know what's going on. And
mm,
but the leader that I was working for just, it's not right. It's not good. It's
mm,
not this. It's not, our command did excellent.
mm,
We were excellent war fighters, but it was never enough. And I
mm,
never knew what I needed to do differently. But at the time, I don't think I had the confidence to actually lean in and
mhm,
ask, what do you need me to do?
mhm,
What could I be doing differently to
mhm,
make your job easier or to do it more correctly? And it was years later, actually, I was working on a staff and got to interact with this leader again. And I had some detailers suggest, hey, why don't you take this leader out to dinner and talk to that person about it? I'm like, okay. So I did. I went out to dinner with this person, and it was a good conversation, very healthy. And the one thing that they said is like, my only regret is that I chose not to mentor you. I was like, what?
Wow.
And
Wow.
I was like, wow, like, okay.
Mhm.
So again, I go back to the crossroads. I can either be like, oh, woe is me. All right, Roger, I'll just keep going on.
Mhm.
But instead, I was like, okay, if I'm ever in that position, if I'm ever blessed with being able to be in that position, how could I best make sure that I never do that to someone
Mhm.
and wait years from now? Because all the other words that were used in that conversation that evening are like, you're doing great. I've been following you. You know how to do it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, but in this situation, what could I have done better that we had a better,
Mhm.
um, and so that statement has stuck with me. I will
Mhm.
never choose not to mentor someone. I will never not speak my mind.
Mhm.
Uh, Timeliness is important for sure.
Yes.
And one of the things I learned also in during that tour was the how to best counsel, and it was like my first stepping stones of how to counsel khaki leadership. And I know not everyone has khaki leadership, right? But for me, it was how, like, your peers. How do you counsel your peers, or how do you counsel people that are directly beneath you? And so, and to me, it was very important. It's a tool, our letters of instruction, or our, non-punitive letters of caution, and they're not supposed to be looked at as discipline. They're supposed to be like counseling tools. And
Mhm.
so I've learned through this process that, hey, it's important to sit down with this person and be like, hey, these are the facts. On this date, this happened. This date, this happened. This date, this happened. In order for you to meet the goals of what we need to get done, I need you to do this by this date. I need you to do this by this date. You need to communicate with this person and spell it out for them, not because they're incapable of doing life, but in order to give them a guideline to take steps on it. I've received LOIs and it's helped me. And so it's that communication, because if you don't, you could go years at a time and not knowing what you did wrong and how you could have improved that that time of your life.
I had to pause and just listen because I'm like, this is really meat. Like, this is serious meat for all of us as leaders to be able to stop and to process. And, Jessica has shared with us some examples from her own experience. And I'm asking each of you as leaders, what about your own examples, right? Share with us in the chat, even in the chat right now. Go ahead and tell us what is resonating, what you're resonating with, and also how you as a leader are able to walk forward utilizing communication. So, Jess, I want to ask you this question, right? Many leaders focus on speaking, but few master listening. How can leaders become better listeners to strengthen their influence?
It was funny when I saw that question. I sort of chuckled when you had sent it to me, because I'm in this course right now with my husband called Emotionally Healthy Relationships, and
Mhm.
part of that is learning how to be a better listener.
Mm.
So often our brains are working towards giving the answer and the way ahead, and the moment someone else opens their mouth. But sometimes they don't need that.
Mm.
Sometimes they just need you to listen.
Mhm.
So one of the tools that they used that we used, I can't remember the exact name, but it's basically mimicking. So whatever that person says, you echo it back, and then
Mm.
whatever they say, you echo it back. And it's like almost so that they are reaffirmed that what they said, you heard, and that
Mhm.
they are feeling seen. So like I've used that on a couple different situations at work, and it does work. It does help, and it also helps your brain slow down,
Mm.
so that you're not just all of a sudden trying to interject. It's important. Listening is essential, so that you understand that you have clarity, and you provide the answers that your leadership or the junior sailors or junior service members need.
Yes, absolutely. So, they say that listen, the same letters in listen spell silent. I love that. Listen, be quiet, right? They say you have two ears and one mouth for a reason, right? But
Yes.
sometimes as leaders, we're challenged. We are truly challenged with that listen, right? Um, but it's important for us to really pay attention to that and to stop talking sometimes. Just be still and listen, because when we do, it says listening communicates three powerful things every team craves. I see you, I value you, you matter. I tell you, just sometimes when I see some of my team members and I see that there's a challenge with them in the workspace, right? Whether I come in and they have an attitude, they come in, they're late, they're sitting with their arms crossed in staff meetings. I find that when I stop and I just have a conversation with them, right, and I just listen, it's like something inside of them opens up. They just many times people don't need you to solve their problems. They just want you to listen because it communicates, I value you.
Yes.
For them, they may feel as though they're doing the most menial tasks, right? I remember being on the ship and seeing chipping off the paint. And, some of those tasks were just like, what in the world did I join the military for this for? But they had value. They had value. They had a purpose. We needed them, right? And when the leadership found a way to communicate to them, we see you. We see you, we hear you, we value you and what you do. Even if it didn't make sense to them what they were doing at this moment, the way they did their job was so much more refined and enhanced than being in those circumstances where that was not communicated to them. So to all of our leaders, all of us are listening and engaging in this conversation. Jess and I want to invite you to continue to enhance your communication skills. And as you do so with your team, do your best to communicate to your team members that you see them, that you value them, and that they matter. All right. So just as we turn the corner in this amazing conversation, this is like, whoa. I want to ask you this final question. If every leader watching or listening could make a simple change to improve how they communicate, what would you challenge us to start doing today?
I would challenge you guys to be transparent
Mm,
about your expectations and your values. Bring alongside your trusted advisors for counsel and course correction. Receive that feedback. Always speak up when there's confusion, and just live with integrity the entire time here in leadership.
wow. I love that. All right, leaders, these are words you heard from Jessica Betz, words to live by. Jessica, thank you so much for being with us today on Transformation Station. We thank you for your service, for your leadership, and thank you for taking the time to sow into our community. It's been an honor to have you here today.
Thank you, Adrienne. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. All right. Well, there you have it. What an amazing conversation. This definitely is one that I'm going to have to go back and watch on the replay. And I want to remind you that better communication doesn't require perfection. It requires presence, curiosity, and courage. So here's the challenge. Where in your leadership, your team, or your life do you need to strengthen the bridge of communication today? If today's conversation gave you clarity or reminded you of the power of connection, I want to invite you right now to share this episode with another leader who needs to hear this conversation. Don't forget to subscribe to Transformation Station so you never miss an episode. And every day this week, We are continuing to talk every day this week at 6 and 10 p.m. We're continuing to talk to another leader. So be sure to tune in and be sure to catch up on the episodes that you have missed. So until next time, lead with clarity, speak with intention, and keep on transforming from the inside out.